Welcome back, YouTube, to Icy Chap's Edge. I'm Icy Chap here with another knife review, this time looking at the Camillus Becker BK-7 Combat Utility. This is one of the first knives I acquired when I started collecting them, and for me holds a lot of sentimental value because of that. But that being said, it is just an all-around excellent knife. Regardless of my personal bias, I can tell you that if you're able to acquire one of these, or even one of the new Camillus-made Becker knives, you're going to do very well. They are high value, high utility knives, and as the name suggests, this really is a well-balanced combat utility knife. And I'm going to get to all that. First, let's talk about the sheath. Unfortunately, not a high point. Most of the Camillus Becker knives came with Kydex sheaths. This one came with the nylon over a plastic insert. Not very durable. Mine appears to be in good shape, and it is because I never exposed it to the elements. I never wore it on my person. I always carried it inside a pack, and that protected it. Also, one of the major problems with this sheath is it doesn't have a lot of attachment options. Really only has this belt loop, and there is this strap behind that belt loop, but I don't know what it's for. You've got rivets at either end of the sheath, which I can only assume are for lacing to make it jump safe. But given the fact that it's so limited in attachment possibilities, I don't see anyone carrying this on their person, so that's basically useless. It did have decent retention thanks to that retention strap, but unfortunately without the retention strap, a little bit of shaking and the knife comes right out of the sheath. So not a great sheath, unfortunately. But let's look at that blade design. Excellent blade design, and Becker really knew what he was doing with this knife. He chose a basic Bowie design, but modified the clip point, put a thumb ramp with jimping, and he came up with a knife which is really universally effective for both fighting and for any kind of wilderness tasks you'll need to perform. And let me explain why. Number one, you've got a nice long blade, so you've got a lot of reach. Number two, it's very broad with a flat grind, so you can put a very sharp edge on it. Number three, because of the Bowie shape, you've got a nice sweep towards the latter third of the edge. And number four, he put a decent grind, let's see if I can get it in focus, a decent grind on the spine near the tip, but not so much that the tip became weak. All of these qualities are very important to making this knife as effective as it is. First, I'll talk about fighting. Number one, that blade design makes for a very effective piercing weapon and an effective slashing weapon. You've got a lot of reach, you've got a nice sweep, you're going to be able to do a lot of damage with this knife. Because it's so broad, if you are able to pierce your opponent, you're going to do a ton of damage. The more steel that you're able to force into your opponent, basically the more tissue you're going to destroy. Another effective aspect of this knife for combat, you've got a good guard for your hand based on the steel of the knife itself being shaped there. Number two, you've got a nice, thick, robust handle, so you're going to be able to get good purchase. One hit against the handle, unfortunately, is because it's that fiberglass reinforced nylon, there really should be some texturing on it. This material can get very slick when it gets wet. So unfortunately, there's no texturing, but you can remove the handle and you can replace it with your own. If you want to get some micarta or G10, which is machined or textured, that's going to be a large improvement to the knife. You also have the exposed tang at the pommel, and you've got a nice weapon surface there if you need to strike with it. So as a fighting knife, very effective. One other thing to point out also, because of that handle being so thick and robust, a lot of weight, I'd say at least 60% of the knife's weight is in the handle. And what that does is making this a weight rearward knife as opposed to forward really makes it fast. This is a very fast knife. Despite the size of that blade, it's very fast. I would say faster than nearly any other 7-inch blade out there that has this kind of utility. So very, very effective for combat. What about bushcraft? Well, two things to point out. Number one, you've got a nice sized handle. If you want to get good chopping, really a long lever, just grip the knife towards the back of the handle and you're going to be able to get nice long strokes for chopping. This is 0176C steel. Very, very tough stuff. I've used it extensively in the woods. both to chop and split wood, and I can tell you that it stands up to tremendous punishment. You've got a decently thick spine, so you are going to be able to baton well on that spine. Also, because the tip is still strong, you've got all that real estate to pound on with a baton. It's got nice jimping on the back here, which I've talked about in other videos, is very useful for making fire. You can strike it on a fire steel instead of damaging your edge. And for choking up, because a lot of the weight is in the handle, it makes this a very nimble knife. You've got a lot of control. This is an excellent wilderness survival blade. What else can I tell you? I think that there should have been texture drilled into this or ground into this handle. That really was a major oversight. And unfortunately, I think all of the Camillus Becker knives had that same oversight. They should have had either a higher quality handle material, or with this handle material, they should have done some texturing. In addition, I think they could have vastly improved the knife by putting a better sheath with it. But overall, I think it's got some tremendous design aspects. It's got really great steel. And overall, I think this is a terrific knife, whether you need it for combat applications or wilderness survival applications. This truly does live up to its name as a combat utility knife. So that is my review of the Camillus Becker BK-7 Combat Utility. I score this knife an 8.5 out of 10 because of its excellent design, great steel, its only shortcomings being the handle and the sheath, which I believe if you really want to use this knife on a regular basis, those shortcomings are easily overcome. So 8.5 out of 10. I hope you enjoyed the review. Leave comments and subscribe, and have a good one.